and this is the last lab to CLAT 22, wherein we would be discussing the emergency provisions in the Constitution of India. How are you all? Good evening. Good evening. Yes, good evening, buddy. Good evening. Hello, hello, hello. So it's hot. What's the temperature back at your place? I think I'm living in 100 degrees. I'm not sure. Might be more. Yes, so today we are going to discuss the emergency provisions in the Constitution. They are important, may come as a straight passage in the constitutional section, in the legal section of Constitution part. Plus, they may be asked as a static GK, like there are amendments related to it, directly related to it. For example, 42nd, 39th, not 39th, 38th, and 44th. These three amendments, which have been the most landmark amendments in the constitutional syllabus, are directly related to it. Yes, yes, 45 degrees, my God. The summer in tropics is horrible, like extremely horrible. What is happening? What is happening वाला horrible है? ये क्या हो रहा है भाई? इतनी गर्मी. I feel like I'm living in a kiln. Kiln जैसा temperature है, भट्टी हो गई है एकदम. हेलो हेलो एवरीवन. यू मस्ट बी कि ज्यादा ठंड होती है तो मैम कहती हैं बहुत ठंड है, ज्यादा गर्मी होती है तो मैम कहती हैं बहुत गर्मी है. मैम आपको टेम्परेचर कौन सा चाहिए? मॉडरेट. मॉडरेट जिसमें सब सुख ही रहे, किसी को ना सर्दी लगे ना गर्मी, ना एयर कंडीशनिंग का बिल आए, ना ही हीटर का बिल आए, है ना. तो वो टेम्परेचर चाहिए, समझे? राइट. आई नो. दिल्ली में एनीवे ज्यादा गर्मी होती है, डेंसिटी बहुत है पॉपुलेशन की, प्लस डेंसिटी की वजह से कार्स वगैरह बहुत ज्यादा है, ट्रैफिक एटसेट्रा. आई नो. एंड it rains as if इंद्रदेव इज मैड एट अस. जैसे इंद्रदेव नाराज है हमसे, उस तरह की बारिश होती है. फिर लाइट एक दिन के लिए पूरी तरह से चली जाती है क्योंकि कुछ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी में फॉल्ट आ जाता है. उफ. Anyhow, so yes, without wasting our time, let us start. बेंगलुरु वाला वेदर चाहिए, बिल्कुल सही हेमंत, बिल्कुल तुमने 1,00,000 रुपए की बात की है. दिस इज वर्थ एवरीथिंग. दिस इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट आई वांट. Maybe we should all move to Bengaluru. Will they allow us? Sach mein. Will they allow that many people just to move to Bengaluru? तो पता है हिल स्टेशन इस देश में बने ही ऐसे क्योंकि ब्रिटिश गर्मी सहन नहीं कर पाते थे. बिकॉज यूरोप में इतनी गर्मी नहीं पड़ती है जितनी ट्रॉपिक्स में पड़ती है. तो इसीलिए हिल स्टेशंस को डेवलप किया गया. दे यूज्ड टू स्पेंड द एंटायर समर इन देयर वेकेशन हाउसेस लोकेटेड इन हिल्स. राइट. तो इंडिया में ये उत्तराखंड, हिमाचल प्रदेश और वो एरिया जो पाकिस्तान की तरफ चला गया, रावलपिंडी. पिंडी के पास एक जगह है जिसको खारिया कहते हैं. सो खारिया इज अ प्लेस विच इज a mountain lodge resort kind of a place. So that was very, very good for spending the summer there. In fact, back in colonial times, जो ये बड़े बड़े नोबिलिटी जो होती थी, अपर क्लास मेंबर्स जो होते थे, ब्रिटिश नोबिलिटी के मेंबर्स होते थे, वो अपना समर भी अपने घरों में नहीं बिताते थे. दे यूज्ड टू मूव टू कोल्डर प्लेसेस लाइक आयरलैंड एटसेट्रा, जहाँ पे इनके कॉटेजेस और समर होम्स होते थे ताकि गर्मी इनको झेलनी ना पड़े. फिर स्प्रिंग जब आती थी तब ये लोग आते थे वापस. बताइए क्या कन्वीनियंट लाइफ है. जहां सर्दी है वहां चले जाओ बस, और जब गर्मी खत्म हो जाए तो लौट के घर आ जाओ. That is just too convenient, right? So, okay, so let us start. So, emergency is a situation which is imposed if there is a failure in the governance. Yeah, हाँ. तो ऐसा होता है समटाइम्स देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम दैट में अराइज और गवर्नेंस उतनी स्मूथली नहीं चल पाती है जितना वो चलना चाहिए. When we talk about the stability of the government, it is an imperative situation for any economy's development, because without a stable government country आगे बढ़ नहीं सकती, कुछ भी नहीं हो पाएगा. You need proper governance, you need proper law and order that needs to be maintained at all times. क्योंकि थोड़ा सा भी अगर उसमें ग्लिच आ जाता है, थोड़ा सा भी उसमें एक चिंक आ जाता है उस पूरे के पूरे सेटअप में जो कंट्री को रन कर रहा है, तुरंत ही हर चीज, हर मशीनरी इधर उधर से उसके स्क्रूज ढीले होने लगते हैं एंड इट इज अ सिचुएशन ऑफ केओस. तो उस केओस को डील करने के लिए एक इमीडिएट एक्शन लेने की पावर है पार्लियामेंट के पास, और उसी एक्शन को हम इमरजेंसी कहते हैं. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ देर इज एन unforeseeable situation such as war or an external aggression from another country or an armed rebellion from country's people itself, कोई civil war जैसी situation आपकी country में आ गई है, or if the country is facing war from another country, या फिर कोई external aggression दूसरी country बहुत aggressively आपके borders की तरफ बढ़ रही है, and that may entail a war like situation, वहां पे country के governance के सारे resources channelize कर दिए जाते हैं. All the resources, everything, every energy, every effort, all the people, everyone in the machinery is directed towards curbing that particular situation or meeting with that contingency. और क्योंकि there is one particular area where everything is channelized, राइट, तो जो नॉर्मल गवर्नेंस होता है उस पे असर आ जाता है. अब उस नॉर्मल गवर्नेंस को चलाने के लिए क्या तरीका है? यही तरीका है कि इमरजेंसी की सिचुएशन लाई जाए और लोगों के ऊपर लॉ एंड ऑर्डर एक्सट्रीमली स्ट्रिक्ट कर दिया जा सके, ताकि बाकी जगह से ध्यान हटा के एक इस कंटिंजेंसी को हम आराम से डील कर सकें. इसी सिचुएशन को इमरजेंसी कहा जाता है. ठीक है, सबको समझ आ गया? डिड एवरीबडी अंडरस्टैंड टिल नाउ? जल्दी से बताओ. Right. So the emergency provisions are given in Part 18 of the Constitution of India. The articles that deal with it are from Article 352 till 360, wherein we have different kinds of emergency and the power allocation. The federal structure completely changes in an emergency situation. The federal structure lays down that every government has a certain set of powers. Every tier has its own respective powers, its own respective corner within which they can work, right? But if there is a situation like emergency, the federal structure demands a tweak. More power is given to the center and states are supposed to follow the center, so that there is an all the time or an absolute collaboration and mutual understanding between all tiers of government. ठीक है, सारे के सारे टीयर्स के बीच में, सारे लेवल के बीच में एक प्रॉपर कोलैबोरेशन, एक म्यूचुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग, प्रॉपर सामंजस्य होना चाहिए, वरना मशीनरी बहुत बुरी तरह से खराब हो जाएगी. इसीलिए सारी की सारी पावर एक ही टीयर को दे दी जाती है और बाकी सब उसको फॉलो करने लगते हैं, राइट? तो ये सारे की सारे जो प्रोविजंस है टू डील विद हाउ व्हाट पावर्स आर गिवन टू whom, what changes happen, what is the situation of fundamental rights, what is the situation of the federal structure, किस तरह से राइट्स अप्लाई हो सकते हैं, जुडिशरी का क्या रोल रहेगा, वो सब कुछ ये 8 आर्टिकल्स में दे रखा है, फ्रॉम आर्टिकल 352 टिल आर्टिकल 360. yes Rohan, you're right. The concept of emergency is borrowed from Germany. This is something that you need to remember at all times. This is a question that might be asked from you when you take judiciary also. ठीक है, ये कहाँ से, from where are these provisions taken, which are they actually form the basic structure of the constitution. So from where are they borrowed? This is all very important. That might be asked in your CLAT static GK, and that will definitely be asked from you when you take judicial exams, right? So what is the effect of emergency? The center state relationship changes completely. That is how emergency affects. Like I told you, the center state relations change in usual scenario also, we don't resort to a complete federal structure such as USA. We have a quasi federal structure wherein the center is made more powerful. States do have their powers and they have a lot of power, but more power is given to the center, right? They are primarily governing the entire territory of India. And despite the fact that they have more power, even more powers, greater powers, or the remaining powers which are not given to them are also given to them during an emergency. The status of fundamental right also changes. Now, how do these fundamental rights change has been interpreted over time. After 44th Amendment, which came around 1977 or 78, we got a clear idea of what is the exact situation of fundamental rights. So when we talk about the suspension of fundamental rights, which is Article 19 actually, that gives us several freedoms, that is suspended during the proclamation of a national emergency. Mind you, Article 19 is suspended only during the proclamation of national emergency, not any other kind of emergency. Financial emergency is something that we have never faced before. Oh, sorry, we have never faced, and I hope we never do. President's rule keep happening. National emergency was imposed once, but it was enforced consecutively for 3-4 years by Indira Gandhi's government, during which the condition of fundamental rights went down to gutters. We had no fundamental rights whatsoever, right? Under Article 359, the President has been given the authority to suspend the right to move any court for the enforcement of fundamental rights during a national emergency. Yes, Ruhi, exactly. So this thing that Article 20 and 21 will not be suspended came after 44th Amendment. Before 44th Amendment, the situation was clarified in A.K. Gopalan. 1975 what? Yes, Article 2021 cannot be suspended. Restrictions can definitely uh, be imposed. They have to be imposed. Absolute rights cannot be given during emergency. With certain restrictions, these articles can still function. So these are the three types of emergencies that we have. Yep. The first one is Article 352, which is a national emergency. The second is 356, which is President's Rule, States Emergency. And the third is 360, Financial Emergency. Now, what are the grounds for the proclamation of national emergency? National emergency can be imposed on three grounds. The first ground is war. Third is external aggression. And sorry, second is external aggression. And the third is armed rebellion. Now, before this word armed rebellion, we used to have internal disturbances. The word or the ground on which national emergency could be imposed before 1978 was internal disturbance. And this internal disturbance, this term was extremely vague. It was very, very vague. It was extremely ambiguous and it could be interpreted to every government's personal misuse, which was done actually. Internal disturbance क्या होगा? What a government or what a leader would deem as internal disturbance is completely his volition. So he can deem anything as internal disturbance. Even a protest in a local college can be an internal disturbance because it is disturbing his peace of mind. He can declare a national emergency even on that ground and constitution would allow him to do it. So as to remove this ambiguity, the word was replaced with armed rebellion. So until and unless people come on roads or people protests with arms and ammunitions, they rebel against the government of India or against anything that the government of India does with arms. अगर लोग सड़कों पे उतर आते हैं प्रोटेस्ट करते हुए हथियारों के साथ, तो उसे आर्म्ड रेबेलियन कहते हैं. और इन तीन सिचुएशंस के अलावा किसी और सिचुएशन में नेशनल इमरजेंसी को प्रोक्लेम नहीं किया जा सकता. Got it? Yes. Who can declare an emergency? Emergency is declared by the President of India in consonance with the Union Cabinet during certain crises. So whatever emergency it is, it has to be advised. Like President cannot act without the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, right? So if there is a situation where emergency is required, because the people primarily involved in the governance machinery would advise the president that we require an emergency or we require immediate action क्योंकि emergency like situation हो गई है, और इसी एडवाइस पर प्रेसिडेंट इमरजेंसी को सैंक्शन करता है, सिग्नेचर करता है और इमरजेंसी इम्पोज कर दी जाती है. The president's rule can be judicially reviewed. Now, national emergency है वो तो कैबिनेट की मर्जी से आती है, but when we talk about state emergency or the president's rule, it is generally done by the president on the advice of the governor. So if the governor in the state who is representing the center in the state certifies that there has been a failure of constitutional machinery, that the state government is not functioning as per the Constitution of India, then he'll send a report to the president. He'll take aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, and president's rule can be imposed in that particular state, which dismantles the current or the functioning state government, and the central government takes over in that state. That is the president's rule. हाँ, चाइना के वॉर के बाद भी और पाकिस्तान के वॉर के बाद भी इमरजेंसी कंटिन्यू रही, हालांकि फिर भी थोड़ा सा एमिकेबल रेजोल्यूशन हो गया था, लेकिन बाद में फिर भी इमरजेंसी चलती ही रही, राइट? नाउ दीज आर द सिचुएशंस इन विच president's rule can be imposed: constitutional non-conformity by a state with the direction of union, political crisis in a state, an internal subversion in a state, right? Now, the President of India has the power to proclaim state emergency when he receives a report from a governor that explains that constitutional provisions cannot be carried out under the prevailing situation in a state, that the constitutional machinery in a state has completely failed. Now we require an interference from the parliament or the central government. The state government will dismantle and the central government will take over, right? So these are the key points about the emergency in India. Like I told you, there are some amendments which are very important when it comes to emergency. Yep. So 38th Amendment of 1975 made the judicial review inapplicable in case of national emergency. 38th Amendment actually did a lot of things. 38th Amendment also provided that the question or the dispute relating to the election of the president, the prime minister, the vice president and the speaker of Lok Sabha immune to judicial review. So if there is a there's a dispute regarding elections of these four entities or these four positions, judiciary cannot entertain that question. It will be entertained by the by a meeting conducted maybe in the parliament, but judiciary has no power to deal with disputes relating to these elections, which made the Allahabad ruling against Indira Gandhi redundant, because she was barred from contesting any election for the period of 6 years. She immediately filed or challenged that judgment and then brought this amendment which took away the power of judiciary and made the Allahabad ruling redundant. Okay. Along with this, और कभी नहीं लगा emergency नहीं. Along with this, she also made a change in the emergency provisions which said that if the president has imposed national emergency, it cannot be questioned by the judiciary. The constitutionality of that national emergency will not be examined by the judiciary. She actually took the power of judicial review by several amendments. She started with 38th Amendment, she ended with 42nd. After 42nd Amendment, there was no power of judicial review left with the judiciary. It had no power whatsoever. The provision was subsequently deleted, thankfully, by 44th Amendment in 1978. And 44th Amendment actually made the proclamation of emergency extremely difficult. The word internal disturbance was replaced with the armed rebellion. The proclamation became extremely cumbersome and difficult. It could not be imposed just like that. There was a long procedure added so that nobody imposes emergency like the way it was by the Indira Gandhi. Okay. In Minerva Mills case, which happened in 1980, the Supreme Court held that national emergency can be challenged in the court on the grounds of malified intent. That was intent. It's not intended, it's intent, that the declaration was based on wholly extraneous and irrelevant facts. Right. Finally, in Minerva Mills, the provision of 38th Amendment was done away with, and it was held that Supreme Court has the power to inquire about national emergency if it can be proven or it is prima facie that the grounds on which the emergency was proclaimed was not bona fide and it was irrelevant. Okay. In the case of S.R. Bomey, the S.R. Bomey case dealt with the President's rule. Minerva Mills dealt with national emergency. In S.R. Bomey versus Union of India, the President's rule was challenged and the President's rule was declared to be unconstitutional in the state of Bihar. And the Supreme Court said that President's rule is a power that should not be used with so often because it destroys the federal structure and the democratic setup of the government or the country. Right, the democracy and the federalism that the constitution holds as the basic structure gets completely violated if president's rule is imposed often or imposed just like that. So until and unless there is an actual failure of constitutional machinery, 352 cannot be used, and if it is used and it can be proven that it was not based on proper significant facts, it will be deemed or it will be declared unconstitutional. ठीक है, सबको समझ आ गया? गवर्नर नहीं डिक्लेयर करता है प्रेसिडेंट इमरजेंसी, इमरजेंसी चाहे स्टेट हो, चाहे फाइनेंशियल हो, चाहे नेशनल हो, डिक्लेयर प्रेसिडेंट ही करता है, not the governor. He can only recommend, he can only report the fact that the constitutional machinery has failed. He cannot impose emergency. So national emergency has been imposed 3 times in India so far. Indo-China War, which was held in 1962-1968 on grounds of external aggression. Then Indo-Pak War, 1971 till 1977, again on grounds of external aggression. Then there was a clash between judiciary and legislature between 75 till 77. Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India, with the permission of then President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, declared an emergency. Yeah. Okay. Section, this is not 256, it is 356. Okay, it is 356. There's an error. So Article 356 talks about failure of constitutional machinery, which is also known as President's Rule. हम पढ़ ही चुके हैं. So if the President, upon reading the Governor's report or otherwise, is satisfied that a situation is there wherein the governance cannot be carried on according to what the Constitution lays down, he then may discuss this with the Cabinet or with the Council of Ministers and may issue state emergency or President's Rule in that state. Right? The President can declare emergency either by the report of the Governor or if he is satisfied himself that the situation has arisen in which the emergency needs to be imposed. Right? Then after the President's rule is imposed, the President himself assumes all the executive powers of that state. The state administration is run by him or by the President or by the person appointed by him, who is generally the governor. But we all know that the President does not work without the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, which is actually the Union Cabinet. So actually, मतलब translation अगर कर दिया जाए इसका, in President's rule, it is not the President who is ruling over the state, it is actually the Union Cabinet, right? इसीलिए तो करते हैं ये सब ऐसा. जब अपनी मेजॉरिटी स्टेट में नहीं आती है तो प्रेसिडेंट्स रूल से बिना इलेक्शन लड़े अपना इम्पोजिशन, अपना गवर्नेंस उस स्टेट में स्टैब्लिश कर लेते हैं. इसीलिए इसको इतना ज्यादा क्रिटिसाइज किया जाता है. During such proclamation, the state emergency is either dissolved or suspended. MLAs do not lose their membership of the state assembly. MB के लिए graduation जरूरी है, masters है ना वो. Now, after the president's rule is imposed, the state list also is given to the president or the parliament. So usually the parliament can only make laws on the central list, on the subjects given in the central list or the concurrent list. But during a president's rule, the parliament has or gets the power to make laws from the subjects given in the state list also. Got it? The High Court of the states functions independently. Now, emergency has no effect on judiciary. Okay. The president also proclaims ordinances, and that is irrelevant. Okay. Now, in Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India Bihar Assembly dissolution case, it was held that the presidential proclamation that dissolved the state assembly in Bihar under Article 356 was unconstitutional and extraneous on irrelevant ground. Now, this can be something that you might find very helpful. आप इसे पढ़ सकते हैं. Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India and S.R. Bombay versus Union of India are two cases that you should read. इक्वल नहीं है मुस्कान. गवर्नर कैपिटल सेंटेंस को और कोर्ट मार्शल को पार्डन नहीं कर सकते. ये सिर्फ प्रेसिडेंट ही कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. कैपिटल पनिशमेंट विच इज डेथ पनिशमेंट. तो कैपिटल पनिशमेंट को और कोर्ट मार्शल के पनिशमेंट को पार्डन करने का पावर सिर्फ प्रेसिडेंट के पास है. यस रोहन, 1 साल तक हाँ एक्सटेंड हो जाता है. रामेश्वर प्रसाद वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया एंड एसआर बोम्बई वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया इज योर होमवर्क. डू रीड देम. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट केस है. प्रेसिडेंट्स रूल को किस तरह से मिसयूज किया गया है, दिस इज समथिंग दैट यू शुड नो. ओके. The court said that the state governor misled the center in the recommendation of dissolution. So that has also happened. In the historic case of SR Bombay versus Union of India, अच्छा मेरे मुंह से बिहार निकल गया था, sorry, it's Karnataka. Full bench of the Karnataka High Court produced a different opinion about the imposition of President's rule. It held that in the courts of other states it was in violation and would have restored the original position. SR Bombay's government was restored, right? Financial emergency is discussed in Article 360. It is a situation wherein the financial stability or the credit of India is threatened or of any part of the territory is threatened. So if the country crumbles financially, then the financial emergency is imposed. In financial emergency, all the salary in the CTCs, not the CTC, sorry, the salary structure changes, the salary is reduced, a lot of things happen, but thankfully we have never faced a situation like this. It has to be laid down before both the houses of the parliament and ceases to operate after the expiration of 2 months unless approved by the resolution of houses in the meanwhile. Okay. So this is about financial emergency. During the operation, the executive authority of the union extends the dispensation of the directions to any state to observe certain specified canons of financial propriety. Basically, the financial decisions, the allocation of taxes, the collection of taxes, the allocation of income, the disbursement of income to various positions and sectors of the government is decided by the union. The power is given to the union. Okay. The directions may include reduction of salaries, like I told you, या allowances of those serving a state or of those who are connected with the affairs of union. Government में काम करते हुए हर कोई इंसान, चाहे वो स्टेट में हो चाहे सेंटर में हो, उसके सैलरीज को और अलाउंसेस को कम कर दिया जाता है ताकि पैसे को बचाया जा सके. स्टॉप नहीं होती है, रिड्यूस होती है. सैलरी स्टॉप नहीं हो सकती. Nobody's salary can be stopped. It can only be reduced if there is a financial emergency, not otherwise. Okay. There has been no occasion of financial emergency in India, thankfully. So tomorrow we are going to discuss the veto powers of the presidents and the governors in India. It is very important. Again, I told you, it relates to the static part of your syllabus, the static GK and legal. Straight passages may come from them. On 3rd June, Alpa ma'am would be solving vocab based question in RC. Then on 4th, I would be again discussing the presumptions in the evidence law. On 6th, Alpa ma'am would be discussing the eliminating options in reading comprehension, and KD sir would be revising the CR concepts on 7th June. Venkat, why don't you underline the important part in the passage? Instead of taking them online, take them offline and underline the important parts. Take a pen or take help of a pencil. You'll be able to remember. Okay. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much. Join us on analysis that were conducted on 19th and 26th June respectively. And this is where you can follow us on YouTube, Insta, Facebook, Telegram, and you can also download our app on Google Play. So everybody share the session, comment on the session, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and nobody leaves the session without liking. अगर आपको चाहिए कि मैं इस तरह के इंटरेस्टिंग सेशंस करवाती रहूं तो आपके लिए जरूरी है कि आप सेशन को लाइक भी करें. That is imperative, right? So that is for today, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take care. Good night.